Good morning. It's November 9th. American elections in the air. People nervous about the future. And I'm reminded about a saying that William Jennings Bryan, who was a presidential candidate, said after looking through one of the newly improved telescopes at this starry night sky. And he's recorded to have said, "I guess it really doesn't matter who wins the election after all." And if anyone should know, Bryan should know, because he had the most electoral votes than any other president candidate, and yet he lost. Even though he accumulated some 493 electoral college votes, more than any other presidential candidate before or after, he still lost the election. Well, in fact, he lost 3 elections because those 483 electoral votes were spread out over 3 different presidential elections in 1896, 1900, and in 1908. Both him and Henry Clay were the only two people to have lost 3 presidential elections. Even before losing the election, so looking up through that new improved telescope, Byron had come to the realization that though the election seemed the most important thing at the moment and to the men of his time, yet there was a force holding the planets and the stars in their course so powerful and so awesome that the election seemed minuscule in comparison. Well, there's other great men that have said the same thing before Byron. Abraham Lincoln, back in the 1800s. Well, Abraham Lincoln lived from 1809 to 1865, and he also said something similar. He said, "I can see how it is possible for a man to look down upon the earth and be an atheist. I cannot conceive how he could look up into the heaven and say, there is no God." Before Abraham Lincoln, Sir Isaac Newton, who lived from 1642 to 1727, expressed the same idea. He said, well, of course, he was looking up in a telescope also, but this is what Newton said. "This most beautiful system of the sun, planets, and comets could only proceed from the counsel and dominion of an intelligent and powerful being. This being governs all things, not as the soul of the world," like the New Age people say, Mother Nature. No, he said, not as the soul of the world, but as Lord over all, and on account of his dominion, he is wont to be called Lord God or universal ruler. In more modern times, Vernon von Braun, who lived from 1912 to 1977, and who helped launch America into outer space as one of the engineers of America's aerospace industry coming from Nazi Germany after the war. He said, "For me, the idea of creation is not conceivable without invoking the necessity of design. One cannot be exposed to the law and order of the universe without concluding that there must be design and purpose." So what all these men are saying is that there's ultimately, or they ultimately believe that there is a God, or that is ultimately in control. Even Albert Einstein, who lived from 1879 to 1955 and was not known as a religious person and did not believe in a personal God, said something similar. He says, "A scientist's religious feeling take the form of rapturous amazement at the harmony of natural law, which reveals an intelligence of such superiority that compared with it, all the systematic thinking and acting of human beings is an utterly insignificant reflection." So we see Einstein, though he didn't believe in a personal God, he nevertheless believed the harmony of natural law revealed a superintelligence. Compared to that superintelligence, all our striving, thinking, and acting were utterly insignificant. So let's look at the Bible and see if we find this thought there. In the book of Psalms, from the ancient Hebrew Bible, we find King David around 3,000 years ago writing, "The heavens declare the glory of God, and the firmament showeth his handiwork. Day after day uttereth speech, and night unto night showeth knowledge. There is no speech and language where their voice is not heard." In other words, he's saying that the stars in the sky, the moon, the sun declare the presence of God, and they're speaking in every language, to every nation, and every dialect, day after day, night after night. This natural glory of the heavens, the beautiful sunsets and sunrises, the constellations in the skies are speaking to us about the glory of God. We find Apostle Paul in the Greek New Testament saying something similar about nature speaking to us. In the book of Romans, we read, "For the invisible things of him from the creation of the world are clearly seen, being understood by the things that are made, even his eternal power and Godhead, so we are without excuse." So Paul is saying, when we look at nature, we can see, we can find God. In the oldest book of the Bible, it's the book of Job, which is believed to be from the time of written in the time of Abraham, around 2000 BC. We see the writer is saying, "Ask now the beasts, and they shall teach thee, and the fowls of the air, and they shall tell thee. Or speak to the earth, and it shall teach thee, and the fishes of the sea shall declare unto thee. Knows not in all these that the hand of the Lord has wrought this, in whose hand is the soul of every living thing, and the breath of all mankind?" So we see Job telling us that if we look at nature, if we have doubt that there is a God, all we need to do is look at nature. Look at biology, look at geology, look at science of these things, the sea creatures, and we're going to find the glory of God. And they all know that it's the Lord that did this. So he's saying that God has the soul of every living creature in his hand, or in other words, we used to sing when we were kids, he's got the whole world in his hands. So God's got the whole world in his hands. Well, it's hard to believe that, no? But when Jesus makes the same argument in the Sermon on the Mount, when he tells us, if God so cared for the birds of the fields and the flowers of the field, will he not take care of each one of us? He goes on to tell us not to worry. He says, why should we worry? Because God even knows the amount of hairs on our heads and promises to take care of us just as he cares for the sparrows, not one of which falls to the ground without his knowing. So we may look at the election, we may be worried that God is not in control and things are not going the way that they should. But God has told us that he can make a crooked path straight, like we say in Portugal. Deus faz linhas rectas, linhas tortas, or God makes a straight line out of a crooked one. So, which is the same thought as we see in the Lord speaking in Isaiah. He says, "My thoughts are not your thoughts, neither are your ways my ways, saith the Lord. For as the heavens are higher than the earth, so are my ways higher than your ways, and my thoughts than your thoughts." So God can make something that looks like it's not, like it's really bad, come out to do something good. So God's word clearly teaches that one of the spiritual forces behind the systems of this world is who? Is Satan. The Apostle John tells us, love not the world, neither the things of the world. If any man love the world, the love of the Father is not in him. And he goes on to say, we know that we are of God, and the whole world lies in wickedness. Jesus himself said, if you are of the world would love its own. Because you are not of the world, but I have chosen you out of the world, therefore the world hates you. Apostle James, Jesus' brother, wrote, you adulterers and adulteresses, know ye not that the friendship of the world is enmity with God? Whosoever therefore is a friend of the world is the enemy of God. Even Luke, in his depiction of Jesus' temptation by the devil, wrote, and the devil, taking him up into a high mountain, showed him all the kingdoms of the world in a moment of time. And the devil said unto him, all this power will I give thee, and the glory of them, that is delivered unto me, and to whomsoever I will I give it. If thou therefore wilt worship me, all shall be thine. So Paul elaborated with these scriptures by adding, the God of this world has blinded the minds of those who believe not, lest the glorious gospel of Christ, who is the image of God, should shine unto them, and they should be saved. He told us that there are spiritual wickedness in high places, and he went on to say that, but none of these things moved him, neither counted he his life dear unto himself, so that he might finish his course with joy and the ministry which he had received of the Lord, to testify of the gospel of the grace of God. So whatever happens here on earth, it's our job to keep our mind and heart on the heavenly vision, to keep looking unto Jesus, the author and the finisher of our faith. He will give us perfect peace to keep our minds stayed on him. We trust in him. In the Psalms we read, the heavens are the heavens of the Lord, the earth he has given to the sons of men. God has given mankind free will. From our knowledge of Bible prophecy, we know that mankind will not choose to follow God. Jesus told us that many will choose the broad way that leads to destruction. Therefore, we can conclude that men may very well make the wrong choices politically. Some believe that both political parties, left or right, are controlled by the same financial or spiritual powers, and they will manipulate either side for their desires and goals. But the time will come when God will need to step in and say, stop the world. He will come to destroy, and it says in the book of Revelations, he will come to destroy them that destroy the earth. And when it looks like things will get so bad in the future that mankind may even be ready to destroy itself if God did not intervene. We can read through many of the prophecies in the Old and New Testament about those terrible times. That's why we have that awesome feeling in the back of our head, looking and seeing, oh no, is it going to come now? Are these days that I've heard about, are they going to come now in my lifetime? And Jesus tells us when he gave his Sermon on the Mount to his disciples about the end times, he said, unless those days of tribulation should be shortened, there should no flesh be saved, but for the elect's sake, those days shall be shortened. So, summarizing, does it really matter who wins the election? The verse from the Bible, which will help us see through putting on our glasses of rose-colored glasses, we can put on and put right on here, Romans 8:28, which says, we know that all things work together for good to them that love God, to them who are called according to his purpose. Each one of us has been called to his purpose. We've heard his call, we responded. we now have his purpose hidden in our hearts, and we realize that God can and will bring good out of every seemingly evil or bad situation we find ourselves in. In the Proverbs we read, the Lord has made all things for himself, yea, even the wicked, the day of evil. God even has a plan for those that reject him. The Lord through Isaiah said, I form light and create darkness. I make peace and create evil. I, the Lord, do all these things. So there we see, that the Lord has allowed all these things. Why? Because the simple reason that he allows evil is because he's given mankind free will. And in order for free will to exist, there has to be the possibility of evil. And in order for love to exist, it is dependent on free will. So God gave mankind free will, knowing that mankind would abuse it and choose evil over good. God knows also how to teach us from our bad choices. He also has made provision for our bad choices by sending a solution to our problem, giving us a way of escape. How did he do that? He himself came into humanity and lived a perfect life, offering us a way of salvation if we would but take it. So yes, everything is ultimately in God's control. He has given us free will to do as we please. Behind the scenes, he's working quietly and secretly to woo us to himself. So no matter who wins the election, the bad or the good, the better or the worse, the right or the wrong, God will let man make his own decisions. But ultimately, he will use those decisions to accomplish his purpose. He is calling us all home to himself, his arms, his command, love one another. From our knowledge of Bible prophecy, we know that mankind will make the wrong decisions. Mankind will end up in the hands of the son of perdition. We know we're moving closer and closer to fulfillment of those end time prophecies. Many of us have studied those prophecies for 40 years or more, and we know what to expect. We know it will be difficult, but we also know that he will be with us, and he'll be helping us and empowering us in those evil days. As we read in the prophet Daniel, the people who know their God shall be strong and do exploits. Therefore, concluding, we can say with William Jennings Bryan, I guess it really doesn't matter who wins the election after all. God is ultimately in control and will work things out for our good. God is with us. He will separate the sheep from the goat, the wheat from the tares on his return. And he admonishes us to not fear and keep busy about his Father's business of winning hearts, souls, and minds into his kingdom. Blessed is that servant whom his Lord, when he comes, shall find doing. Okay? So meditate on those things. Have a good day. God's in control. Doesn't matter who wins the election. God's in control. He's going to use whatever we decide and make it work together for good. His prophecies, what he has said from the past about the future, is going to be completed. We need to trust him, hold on to his hand, and stay close to him. We could be in for a rough ride. We always thought these days were coming, and they may be here. So put your hand to the hand of God, and he will be more to the light and better than a known way. God bless you. I love you.